Good afternoon. Premier will have some remarks, and then we'll hear updates from the fire officials, and then all three will be available to take your questions.
Good morning, everybody. We are here again to update you on progress on the Fort McMurray wildfire since yesterday morning, and to discuss some of the work the Government of Alberta will be tackling over the next 5 days. Our key goal yesterday was to complete the evacuation of the 25,000 residents who fled to the north of Fort McMurray. And I am pleased to say that that has succeeded completely. In sometimes very difficult conditions due to smoke, most of the remaining evacuees were able to move to the south by driving along Highway 63, and the rest were evacuated by air. As of 10 o'clock this morning, no evacuees have been reported remaining in the camps to the north. I'm also pleased to report that about 300 people from Fort McMurray were evacuated yesterday into the Edmonton area by air and ground, and this was done as a precautionary evacuation due to heavy smoke in the area. 1,500 employees at the Syncrude facility were evacuated yesterday, and the facility was shut down. Groups of employees have also been evacuated from Suncor, Husky, IOL, Esso, Shell, and CNRL facilities. Many of these facilities are still operating, and we'll be giving you a fuller report on the status and operations of these facilities in the next few days. Thank you so much to everyone involved in all of these efforts to get people to safety. What an amazing job you've done. Now, it has been widely remarked, including by myself, about how miraculous it has been to evacuate the entire population of the city and its surrounding facilities in such a short period of time. Unfortunately, we did lose at least 2 of our fellow citizens during this emergency due to traffic fatalities. As has been reported in the media, we lost Emily Ryan and Aaron Hodgson during the evacuation. Our hearts go out to their families. This is Mother's Day. I'm hoping, in all of this crisis, to spend a few minutes today with my own children. That not all of us can do that is definitely an awful tragedy. So, today, Mother's Day, all of us in Alberta are thinking of you who have suffered these losses. Let me please update you now on the rest of the fire. There are many children to look after among the evacuees. As I reported yesterday, schools are ready and have already begun admitting children to class. So no matter what community you've been evacuated to, the schools are ready for you to contact them and send your children tomorrow. Speaking of mothers, as our senior wildlife manager, Chad Morrison, put it well this morning, with a bit of help from Mother Nature and a lot of help from some very dedicated first responders and firefighters, the Fort McMurray fire grew much more slowly than we had feared yesterday. The fire reached approximately 161,000 hectares as of 10:30 a.m. this morning. This is quite a bit smaller than we had feared. Winds continue to blow the fire largely to the east away from the community. It is 30 to 40 kilometers from the border of Saskatchewan. We are working closely and collaboratively with the Saskatchewan government to assist them with their preparations. Firefighters did amazing work containing the growth of the fire to the north of Fort McMurray, where it approached but so far has not damaged a Suncor facility. Firefighters also did amazing work holding the line at Anzac. We lost some buildings there, but the team has been able to save the vast majority of the community so far. Firefighters and first responders who had been based at camp at the Noralta Lodge were evacuated from that facility to a safer one, Fort McMurray itself. It is good news that the city is now safe for first responders to base out of. In Fort McMurray itself, the focus today for first responders is looking for hotspots and flare-ups, given the wind conditions. First responders are also supporting the initial recovery efforts that are now beginning in the city. For example, ATCO Gas and ATCO Electric are working hard to restore the power grid in Fort McMurray and to assess the gas infrastructure. There are currently over 250 ATCO employees on the ground in the city, with more coming. So thanks to all of you for this very important work. Air monitoring equipment is being installed in Fort McMurray to keep an eye on air quality to protect first responders while they do their work. Sea and Rail has offered to take some of the pressure off air operations by offering logistical support to Fort McMurray. And I'd like to express my profound gratitude for the quick work our colleagues at Canadian National did in getting potentially hazardous and flammable rail cars out of the area as quickly as possible during this emergency. That was quick and critical work that saved us from any repetition of the tragedy at Lac Mégantic. Not incidentally, the people of Lac Mégantic expressed their strong solidarity with the people of Fort McMurray and are helping with calls for donations to the Red Cross. Merci pour votre solidarité, nos amis de Lac Mégantic. We are working closely with the government of British Columbia, managing the fire burning across the border at Clear Hills. I was also very grateful to BC Premier Christy Clark for her government's own generous donation to the Red Cross. The Red Cross has been doing important work, including coordinating registrations. As of this morning, 36,381 households have registered. So, again, let me just repeat the message. If you have not yet registered with the Red Cross, please do so at redcross.ca. Let me say a few words about another important group of souls. Alberta Agriculture and Forestry have been working closely with the RCMP and the SPCA in Fort McMurray to address reports from evacuees asking for help with dogs, cats, and other pets left behind during the emergency evacuation. As soon as it was safe to do so, teams began going to locations where people reported that pets had been left behind to give them food and water. And so they've been continuing that work, and they've been also keeping an eye out for animals in the streets. The SPCA is now requesting that anyone with pets left behind register with the SPCA online, and they will contact you in the coming days regarding your pets. Unless circumstances change, I intend to go to Fort McMurray tomorrow to join Mayor Melissa Blake and assess how we're doing and to discuss the work that needs to be done next in securing our city of Fort McMurray. I'd like to thank the journalists who have been covering this tragedy and sharing critical information with the public. We will be coordinating access to Fort McMurray for a small number of media tomorrow. This will be supported by emergency services, as it is still unsafe for anyone who is not a first responder to be inside the barricades. There will be some dramatic images coming from media over the next couple of days. I want to reiterate that mental health supports are available for anyone who needs help. Details on this media access will be available this afternoon. We will be now meeting with energy leaders to discuss the effects of this disaster on the energy industry Tuesday, and I expect to provide a report to you that day. As well, I can report that I've just also had an opportunity to meet with Federal Minister of Public Service Ralph Goodell and Federal Minister of Infrastructure Amarjeet Sohi, as well as MP Randy Boissonneau, and we are continuing to have good conversations with our federal counterparts on how we can work together to support the people of Fort McMurray and the people of Alberta through this tragedy. So that is my report. So I'd like to now invite my colleagues here at the Provincial Operations Centre to give you further details. Thank you. Chad?
Thank you, Premier. Chad Morrison with Alberta Wildfire. So I'm very, very happy to report with some good news from the wildfire front today, with a little help from Mother Nature and a bit of a break in the weather, and really credit to all the hard work of all the firefighters. We were able to hold most of the line in Fort McMurray yesterday. The fire is now only 161,000 hectares, which is smaller than first expected. In extreme conditions yesterday, firefighters held the city areas in the city and in the community of Anzac. Dozer Guard has been established around the Gregoire Lakes area to the south, as well as we continue to secure the Anzac area, protect Gregoire Lakes Estates area, and the Fort McMurray First Nation. We can also report that the fire blew over the Nexon Long Lake yard at this time on site, but with only minor damage into the yard site. Air suppression continued to work on the north side of the fire, and we continue to hold the fire away from the Suncor operations as well as the Northlands lumber yard. Again, we expect the fire to either hold or move away from these sites in the coming days, and as all these sites continue to be fairly resilient to wildfire with cleared areas and industrial fire departments on site. Tomorrow and today, we expect still strong west winds from 30 gusting to 60 kilometers an hour, and we may see a chance of showers later today or overnight. We expect the cooler temperatures in the coming few days to really help firefighters continue to get a handle on the fire inside the city and outside in the forested areas. We had firefighters and air support working the Timberley, Thickwood, and we've put in 17 kilometers of dozer guard in the north end here to continue to establish and secure the north end of the fire. We have over 500 firefighters on site currently, with 200 helicopters, 44 dozers and heavy equipment continuing to work, 27 air tankers available. 4 of the helicopters we have working on site are heavy lift helicopters, and they can deliver more water than a tanker can. They can deliver up to 2,000 gallons in an hour period onto the fire. We have Ontario firefighters that have arrived yesterday and have been working the fire most of the time. We continue to have 66 firefighters coming in from Quebec and New Brunswick this week. Again, thank you to Quebec and Northwest Territories for sending air tanker support. 4 air tankers from Quebec and 1 from Northwest Territories continue to work fires for us. We continue to have over 1,500 firefighters in the province and 146 helicopters and 222 pieces of heavy equipment, along with the air tankers, to continue to address other fires in the province and support this one. As of yesterday, there's 34 fires still burning in the province, but I can happily report as well that 31 of these fires are now either being held or brought under control. I must also note that we have a 44,000 hectare fire along the BC border. And we're working closely with BC to contain this fire, as we have established fire teams on both sides. And I just want to take a moment to thank the BC Forest Service and Fire Service for continuing to assist us during this time. We've established over 50 kilometers of guard, and we continue to hold it. The fire has actually seen some rain and a touch of snow this morning, and we expect to continue to make good progress. And that's the report from Wildfire, and I'll turn it over to Scott.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Scott Long, Executive Director of Operations, Alberta Emergency Management Agency. So just a quick update. As the Premier mentioned, we did do a precautionary evacuation of Noralta Lodge, just north of Fort McMurray. That is primarily RCMP, some highway workers that were involved, and Alberta Health, etc. They have all moved into Fort McMurray. And right now, our focus today is a logistical support to all of those first responders, and in some cases, secondary responders, public works, to make sure that they have all the needs that they require met. Through the good works of some of the public works and our industry partners, we have managed to open up some hotels in the downtown core where we're housing some of those folks. Again, logistical support for first responders is a main activity today as they carry on their good work in the community, which is focused on making sure those hot spots, given the high winds, are contained, identified quickly, and dealt with. Further, with regards to the Provincial Operations Centre, we continue to expand the capacity of the Provincial Operations Centre depending on the need. We now have a Canadian national representative in the Provincial Operations Centre. We have oil and gas industry representatives in the Provincial Operations Centre, TELUS representative, and of course, ATCO Gas and Electric are in the Provincial Operations Centre. Tomorrow, in conjunction with the Premier's visit, we're also going to send up the beginnings of a team that will deal with re-entry planning in conjunction and collaboration with our partners at Wood Buffalo Regional Emergency Operations Center. And as you can well imagine, that is going to be work that will be ongoing for quite some while. And further details on that planning effort will come out in the coming days. Thank you.
Take questions from the floor.
Military, I know that it was kind of going to be possibly people coming in once the situation had calmed down a little bit. It seems now that you've got first responders in there, maybe the situation has calmed enough? Any word on that?
There was actually never any plan to put the military in to Fort McMurray in terms of boots on the ground for access control. That was never part of the plan. It was an option that was available if required. But again, I remind everybody, DND is in extremis. We have more than enough first responders, RCMP available, as you can see, in Fort McMurray right now.
Is there any word yet on what caused the fire at all?
No, not at this time. It's still under investigation, but as I have stated earlier, the likely cause during this time of year is human-caused wildfires, which is why we want all Albertans to take extreme care when in any area, forested area of the province. We've also had some lightning fires this year, so again, our investigation team has been on the ground and is looking at the cause. I expect it to be at least a week or two before we actually get through the process there. And like I said, still early days on determining the cause.
Chad, while we have you, can you maybe explain what the conditions would need to be to use water bombers and helicopters, and if situations would arise where maybe you would just have to let structures burn without a fight, just for the sake of resources or conditions? Would that ever happen?
For us, our first priority is human life and communities, and we're going to always put our air tankers and our firefighters there to protect that as our first priority. We would never let such things happen if we could all possibly help it. This fire has had such extreme wildfire behavior. Some of the fire documentation we've looked at now, we've actually been able to determine that 4 lightning fires resulted as a start from the fire weather generated from the big, larger fire itself. And as well, we've had this fire jump a kilometer-wide or mile-wide river. You know, the extreme conditions that we've had here with no rain for the last 2 months, our concentration, our efforts has always been 100% on protecting human life and communities so that folks can get out safely.
So specifically on the Fort McMurray fire, there would never be a situation where you felt the need to let a block of buildings go?
Never,
Okay.
never.
Now that there's some stability in Fort McMurray, have you been able to do more of an assessment of damage to buildings? And has the timeline for getting people back into the community changed at all?
Good question. The work will start tomorrow as part of that reentry planning. Damage assessment teams are obviously key to that. We have some initial damage reports that were provided, but you have to remember those are initial damage reports provided from first responders on the ground that were engaged in saving lives and saving infrastructure. Further detail will come out in the coming days. But that's clearly a big part of the re-entry is determining the damage assessments. Further, there is no timeline. There are conditions that have to be met as part of that re-entry planning. And again, we're still starting. We're starting it. It's ongoing, but I don't have detail other than the fact there is no set timeline yet. But it will be as quick and as quick as possible when it is safe to do so.
You just the other day, the Premier, cautioned people that it might be quite a long period of time. Does it still look like that?
Again, no timeline has been set. We want to do it as quickly as we can. Our goal is to make sure that the re-entry plan, based on lessons learned that we have learned from from Slave Lake and from High River. We have teams with an immense amount of experience in doing this, and those folks are all reinforcing the Fort McMurray re-entry planning so that we can do it as smoothly and as effectively and as efficiently as possible to get people back to their homes quickly.
Chad, you mentioned that the rate of growth was less than what was expected yesterday. Are you expecting that trend to continue because there are cooler temperatures? And at what point do you expect this fire to reach the border with Saskatchewan?
Yeah, thanks. Right now, with the expected cooler temperatures in the coming week, we actually expect to see below seasonal temperatures coming week. So we're hoping over the next 3 to 4 days that we're going to have some great opportunity for firefighters to get on the ground and continue to put out hot spots in the interior, as very much of the interior now is safe for them to work to do so. Long term in the forested areas, way out in the out there, is that we expect to be out there for months, continuing to put the fire out. We could see some growth if we get another week or two of hot and dry weather. That we could expect to see some growth out in that far eastern sides here. But again, that's away from the communities, and we still have a lot of work in front of us, especially in those forested areas.
We're gonna take a question and then we'll go to the phones.
Just a question for the Premier. Has the province put out a call for psychologists, social workers from other provinces to come in and help evacuees?
My understanding is that yes. Well, first of all, AHS itself has developed a plan with respect to distributing mental health and counseling supports to the reception centres, and in fact have been in conversation with other jurisdictions as well about bringing in additional personnel to assist with that work. So that is underway. We're very conscious of the fact that that's going to be a very significant draw and a need for people from the community, so they are well at work on it.
So other provinces are sending those resources here?
I believe that work is going on. What I've heard thus far is that BC will be sending some. I haven't heard the details on the remaining jurisdictions, but there is no question that AHS is very much on this issue and is planning diligently to ensure that people's needs can be met.
We're going to go to the phone lines now. Operator, please put through the first caller.
Your first question comes from Ryan Tomility with Metro Edmonton.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking the call. I'm just wondering if you or if maybe Mr. Long would be better for this question, but wondering if we have an estimate of how many evacuees have gone to which communities. Good.
I'll start, and then if Scott would like to supplement. As we've been saying all along, it's absolutely critical that people register with the Red Cross at the online address to ensure that their data is complete, so that we can then start to develop that information. We're just in the process of working with Red Cross to get a better sense of that information. It's not completely compiled yet, but we do, I think it's safe to say, the majority are in the Edmonton area, although people have been actually moving across the country. So we'll be able to provide more information on that fairly soon, hopefully in the next day or two. But it's a data management issue, and that's why it's so fundamentally important for people to be sure to register with the online at the redcross.ca address. Is that it? Yeah, okay.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Your next question comes from Becky Perlow with ABC News.
Hi, this question might be for Mr. Long. You mentioned the damage assessment came from first responders, and we've seen continued reports that there were about 1,600 structures lost, but we still haven't seen any new numbers since that 1,600 number was first reported. We're wondering, have any new structures been lost and added to that list? Do you have any definitive updates or numbers on total structures lost?
Again, good question. We've been at phase one of the operation for us has been response, and that has been ongoing for the last 6 days. All those first responders' primary function was preservation of life and preservation of structures, not so much counting the structures. Now that we're going into the phase two, which is stabilization of the situation, which seems to be happening thanks to the great work of the firefighters, and again, as Mother Nature has helped, we're going to start getting some folks on the ground that can start having a look at those damage assessments and getting a better feel for it. I can tell you part of what we've been trying to do, and we've been briefing on, we've been paying a special attention to the critical infrastructure within Fort McMurray, because things like power stations, schools, hospitals, water treatment plants are essential for the reentry planning. And you will see, as we've briefed upon, a lot of the firefighting efforts have been around reinforcing and protecting that critical infrastructure. That will lead to the eventual timeline that you folks are interested in. If we don't have a hospital and we don't have a water treatment plant, that's going to be a whole lot longer. We have a hospital. We have a water treatment plant. Now we just need to get in there and see damage, determine how long, and then develop that timeline.
But no updates on specific numbers?
Not yet, ma'am. I think you'll find that within the coming days, we're going to get a much better handle on the numbers of structures. As I said, up until today, or actually up until tomorrow, the focus remains on protecting what's there, not necessarily counting what's there.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Thank you. Premier, at this point, can we say that this is the most expensive disaster in Alberta's history, exceeding the 2013 floods?
Well, I think it's important to probably follow up on the comments that Mr. Long just made, which is that it is really too early to speculate on this. It's too early to speculate on the extent and the nature of the damage. You can walk by a building. It looks like it's still standing. Then you go in and you discover that there has been damage to its engineering infrastructure, and so that in fact that's something that needs to be repaired. Conversely, something can look like it's right next to something that has burned down and it's completely functional. So that's what Mr. Long has been saying is the focus has been protecting, not counting, and so we really can't speculate on damages until we've sent the experts in, sent the engineers in to look at the buildings to determine what needs to be done to ensure that they are safe and functional, close to where they had been before. So it really, the short answer is it is just simply too early to speculate on the amount of damages.
Thanks. If I can follow up with Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the detail on Long Lake. Can you tell us if there are any other energy facilities that are near the head of the fire right now?
Thanks. Chad Morrison with Alberta Wildfire. At this time, to my understanding, the fire is not threatening any of the major facilities to the north. To the south, there are some facilities. Given the cool weather that we're going to experience for the next number of days, we expect to hold the fire. Of course, there is no guarantees, but at this time we feel very strongly with the fire continuing to move out to the east, which is more remote, not much for facilities and more forested areas, that we don't expect any of those impacts at this time.
We're going to stay with the phone for a couple more questions, and then I'll come back to the floor. Operator, please put through the next caller.
Your next question comes from Ian Bailey with Globe and Mail.
Question for Mr. Morrison and Mr. Long. I guess, Mr. Long, you said that lessons were learned from previous wildfires about re-entry. What in the nutshell were those lessons? And then one follow-up after that question.
Key lessons are with regards to Slave Lake, High River, all go towards planning early with regards to re-entry and recovery. These things are not quick. The response phase of these sorts of disasters, catastrophes, while very difficult, are relatively straightforward. We have to stabilize, preserve, protect life, stabilize the situation, preserve critical infrastructure. The hard work is with regards to re-entry planning, as the Premier said, getting experts on the ground, engineer damage assessment teams, having a look at all the critical infrastructure, getting people back to their homes as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, in Alberta, we've had our fair share over the last few years. Fortunately, it's given us a lot of skill sets and a lot of knowledge on how to do this, and that's what we're doing right now. And our hope is that we'll get Albertans back to their homes as quickly as possible.
And this may be a question for the Premier, but what does it say about the sort of state of the firefighting effort that Fort McMurray may now be safe enough for the Premier to go in and take a look at the site? And also, why is it important, maybe this is just a Premier, why is it important for her to take a look at this and see this firsthand?
Well, I think it is fair to say that as more and more fire has burned out around the city and the fuel around the city starts to disappear, that the city itself becomes more secure from the perspective of the risk posed by the wildfire. So that is the point that we are getting to here, and we are starting to move into that second phase of securing the site and assessing the site. The reason it's important for me to go up there is because there are going to be a number of multi-ministry efforts that have to be put into play to do exactly the work that Scott Long has talked about in terms of securing and assessing the infrastructure and determining what needs to be done in order to bring that infrastructure up to a level that allows people to use it safely. And so, as the person who's ultimately overseeing all of this, it's important that I have a chance to see it firsthand. And of course, I'm doing this on the advice of officials within their recommendations, assuring that it is in line with what they're working in and in no way interferes with their primary object of preserving safety and focusing on infrastructure protection and stabilization. So it's really important that as we go in, we do so carefully and that we don't interfere with the incredibly important work of the many first responders who are hard at work protecting and working to reestablish Fort McMurray.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Your next question comes from Tonya Zielinski with Upstream International.
Hi there, good afternoon. A quick question to clarify from Chad Morrison regarding Suncor and Syncrude. I'm curious as to whether or not there has been any damage at all to those operations on the ground. And my second question is for Scott Long. I'm wondering, has there been any unexpected fire starts within the community? I heard reports that there may have been arsonists that were setting homes on fire that had not been affected by the forest fire. Can you make any comment about that?
So Chad Morrison with Alberta Wildfire. Yeah, I can confirm at this point, as of early this morning, that the fire has not reached the Suncor or Syncrude facilities. The fire is still to the south and west of the Suncor facilities. We are currently holding it there. We've worked extensively with air support, air tankers, helicopters, and dozers to secure that. And we'll see how the day goes and progresses, and we'll have a report later tonight or tomorrow morning. But with the cooler weather, I do expect to hold the fire there, and we do expect to hopefully hold the fire over there the next few days.
As you can imagine, within a city the size of Fort McMurray, a lot of hot spots have popped up, so first responders have been crisscrossing throughout the city, putting out those hot spots, which will persist. That work will carry on for a while yet. Yesterday, there were a couple of houses that were damaged by hot spots, but were quickly put out. I'm not aware of details of arsonists. However, there's a huge RCMP presence within the city of Fort McMurray. So I would defer to the RCMP spokesman for further comment on that.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Your next question comes from Sean Polzer with Petroleum Economics.
Oh, hi. Just regarding the meeting with the energy leaders on Tuesday, I was just wondering if you could provide a little more color on what kind of issues they're going to be talking about and whether you think these 1 million barrels a day of shut-ins are going to be a longer-term or a shorter-term issue.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that what we'll be talking about is the a number of different issues around the state of each of their operations, what the impact has been of their operations or on their operations as a result of the vast majority of their employees being evacuated to safety, what their timelines are in terms of restarting that work, and what they believe that how this will impact the work of their particular operations going forward. So it's basically going to be an inventory and as well as a conversation about the work that they are doing and can continue to do to maintain the security of their facilities, as well as an opportunity, of course, to offer our thanks for the support that many of the industry players have already offered to protecting the safety of residents of Fort McMurray, as well as contributing to the firefighting and evacuation efforts. So there'll be a number of issues on the table, and then just as well talking about sort of a little bit around the plan going forward and what people can expect, and just making sure that we're all aware of each other's situations. So, and you'll hear more once we've finished meeting.
Are there any specific things that the province can do to maybe expedite the process?
I'm sorry, expedite which process?
of restarting the production? Like, are there things that the province can do on your end, maybe to help them along in figuring out what needs to be done?
Well, we'll certainly be listening to them and hearing from them whether if there are suggestions along that line. I suspect that, quite frankly, I mean, again, each of these sites and these companies are very sophisticated in terms of the work and the capacity that they have to keep themselves safe, as well as to ensure that their work starts up again in a safe way. So I expect that they are well in the lead on that, but part of the reason, of course, is to meet with them to see if there is anything that the province can offer to ensure the safe resumption of economic activity in the area.
Come back to the floor now.
I've got a question about every single briefing until today has been dire. It's been horrible to listen to every single thing that you guys have all said. There is a marked change in tone today. I'm wondering if you guys can speak to how you're feeling right now about how things are looking today and going forward.
Yeah, I'll let Chad do that. He's the most cheerful.
Chad Morrison with Alberta Wildfire. Obviously, we're obviously very happy that we've held the fire better than expected. Again, the credit goes to the wildfire firefighters out there, the structural firefighters, the first responders, all the help from the RCMP, and I don't want to forget all the people that logistically support these operations. It's huge. It's tremendous. So obviously, I'm very happy about that. And we hope to see continued success over the next few days and have good news in terms of how we continue to make progress when the cooler weather. For us, this is great firefighting weather. We can really get in there and really get a handle on this fire and really get a death grip on it. But for the wildfire stuff out in the forested area, that's going to take us a long time to clean up. But I feel very buoyed and happy that we're making great progress, especially in the community, especially that we can get first responders there, located back in the community, continuing to mop up hot spots and make it safe as soon as we can.
So is it a turning point in these last 24 hours?
It definitely is a positive point for us, for sure. Yeah.
We're hearing from firefighters in the United States who say that they've requested to help out but have been turned away or given the runaround. Has the province been turning away any firefighters, and how can you address some of these concerns that we're hearing?
Not to my knowledge. Right now, of course, we're working through all of our firefighting agencies across Canada. We also work through the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre, who reaches over to the U.S. partners in the National Interagency Forest Fire Centre, or Forest Fire Centre in the U.S. as well. We have regional agreements and stuff. Mostly the issues, I believe, at this time would be simply that we're just trying to get everything lined up and continue to bring things in a manner that's safe where we can deploy those firefighters and get them to work. And we've had great response from all of our partners across Canada as well as throughout the world, and it's just a matter of us being able to expeditiously move people forward in the right and put the right firefighters in the right places at the right time.
Is there any update on whether the cash for evacuees will be flowing any faster than Wednesday?
No, at this time, officials are working furiously to get the mechanics of that distribution in place. And the most recent advice that I have from them is that we are still looking at midweek. So, if we can make it happen sooner, we will. It's simply a matter of having the personnel to put the mechanics in place for that large of a distribution. So they're working very, very hard, and we hope to be able to get those resources to people as soon as we possibly can.
I'm wondering whether the province is also asking federal counterparts for more financial assistance for evacuees, for discretionary funds or for income support. Is that ask being made today?
Well, what we're doing is we're still focusing, of course, on this emergency response piece. Moving forward, we will have additional conversations. As you know, the federal government has acted quickly to ensure that employment insurance that is payable as a result of this natural disaster is processed more quickly. So they're doing that work. And then going forward, in terms of the federal disaster recovery plan, we will certainly be talking to them about ways in which we'd like to see it meld with the work that we're doing to support Albertans who are victims of this disaster. But we haven't gotten into the specifics yet, although we're certainly pleased that they're here, and I know that they're willing to have some pretty open conversations with us.
And so just to be clear, beyond the federal government matching the Red Cross donations, they're at this point not providing any other additional funding?
Well, the way it works is that there is a federal disaster recovery assistance program, and typically how it works is the province pays stuff out, and then after the fact we recover monies from the federal government. The scope of that recovery and the mechanics of that recovery are still being discussed, but there is a program in existence right now, and the question is whether we might suggest that there could be some changes to it to better support the people of Fort McMurray.
I'm just wondering if there's any comment to residents who are seeing that their houses have burned, but the oil facilities, for the most part, have been untouched.
I think that, we have to basically look at Mother Nature. Mother Nature flared up west of Fort McMurray and blew basically into Fort McMurray. And as soon as that happened, people worked furiously to ensure that things were preserved. And indeed, in no way to negate the incredible tragedy of the people who have lost their homes. And there's just nothing you can say to that because it's heartbreaking. But the fact of the matter is a number of homes have been saved because of the incredibly dedicated, focused work of firefighters and first responders, and a great deal of community infrastructure has been saved because of the dedication and the focus of first responders and firefighters. And in terms of the evacuation, people were evacuated because of those firefighters, because of those first responders, and in many cases because of support from industry. And so everybody came together in an exceptional way to get the best outcome possible. So that's what I would say.
We're going to leave it there for today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.